Hi, everybody. This is, my name's Pam from Around the Table Yarns, and this is Crochet Block of the Month. Um, this is our second to last crochet block from the pattern we've been doing. This is block number 28 from the pattern that is referenced on the website. If you are picking this up somewhere in the middle, we've been doing a block a month all year long, and it's been a lot of fun. So I want to show you just a couple of tips on making this block. This block was a lot of fun to make, and it goes by really, really fast. So I'm going to jump right over to sharing my screen and I'll show you what it looks like. Let's see. Okay, so let me zoom out a little bit. So here I've got most of a block done. It's a very pretty stitch. It's got a lot of drape and bend to it, which I like. It's not a stiff stitch, and yet it's also not particularly holey the way some really flexible crochet stitches can be. I'm not exactly sure if this stitch has a name or not, but I really like it quite a bit. It's kind of uniform, but I love how it shows off. It adds a texture to this kind of subtly variegated yarn. So what I'm going to show you now, I'm going to switch over to this is the one that I've been doing for the baby blanket all along. And I'll show you on this, but I'm going to get you started on a dishcloth or a washcloth version that I'm doing in a cotton yarn on a slightly larger hook. Okay, so the pattern has you chaining, I think it's 26. I'm going to do 16 just so that I can have a quicker return here. And my mom likes, I'm going to send her some of these just small little washcloth squares, like for taking off makeup and things like that. So I've got plenty of dishcloths now, but I thought I would make some of these patterns in smaller little squares. So I'm going to do that with this one here. Okay, so the pattern for this, it is one row that you repeat over and over and over again, which makes it great and easy. Let's zoom in just a little. So I do recommend chaining on a larger hook for this pattern. It doesn't always make a difference, but I do feel like it made a difference for this one. So I did this one on a 5.5 millimeter to do my chain, and now I'm going to switch to my 5 millimeter to make my stitch. Okay, so you're going to go into the second chain from the hook, and remember, you never count the loop that's on the hook. So here's the first loop below the hook, and here's the second. So that's the chain I'm going to be going into, and into that chain I'm going to make a single, a chain two, and another single, all into the same chain stitch. Let's go in here. Let me tighten this up. All right, so a single, chain two, and then back into the same space with a second single. Okay, so what I have is a single, a chain two space, and a single all coming out of that same space. I'm going to skip the next chain, and I'm going to repeat into the next. Skip one, so a single, chain two, and a single. Skip one, single, chain two, and a single. Small one here. All right, so remember, when you're skipping one, you want to look at where you're already attached. Even seasoned crocheters make this mistake. So just particularly when you're putting a lot of stitches into a chain stitch like this, let me lay that out and zoom in real quick. And it pulls up the chain a little bit. It can be confusing as to where your next stitch goes. All right, so just pay attention to where My new stitches are attached. They're attached to that chain. Here's the chain I'm going to skip. And now I'm going to repeat my pattern into this chain right here. Okay. Single, chain two, and single. I did find myself on my first pass of doing this, I forgot to do the chain two. And what you don't get, let's skip this one, go here. What you don't get is that nice little kind of rainbow shape where it curves up, and it's very noticeable. So if you don't, when you get to the end of the row, we'll look. And if you don't see the bump or the little rainbow shape, you're going to know that you missed one. And I suggest pulling it back. Sometimes when I get in the Zen mode, I forget to put the chain two. So we're going to do this all the way across to the last chain. Single. Skip that one and go into the last one. Chain two. And a single in the same space. All right, let's lay this out. So you get this little bumpy, almost like a picot look. So if I had forgotten a chain two, I wouldn't get this little bump. It would look very flat across. And I suggest ripping it back because it will, depending on the color of your yarn, if it's really dark, you might not be able to see it, and you can kind of force on your next row into that space. You could force the stitches. But it's worth it just to take a look, make sure you've got those nice little picot looking bumps, and then you can go on. All right, second row, same as the first. We start with a chain one though. So that's one. Chain one and turn. And now I'm going to do the same stitch, and this time I'm going to be doing it into the chain two space that we made in each one. So here's the single, there's another single, and there's a chain two space in between. So I'm going to make into that chain two space a single, chain two, and another single. I'm going to skip over to the next chain two space, single, chain two, single, all the way across. So having those chain two spaces stand out like that makes it really easy to move quickly across these rows. Single, chain two, and a single. Single, chain two, and a single. Single, chain two. Not pull out yarn ahead of time, I apologize. So I've done my single, a chain two. I'm going to go back into the same space with a single. Next one, single, chain two, single. And my last one. There's my chain two space, single, chain two, and single. Okay. So this should look a lot like the first row. I've got those nice picots standing out. I'm going to move over, since I have more done on this one, and show you a couple of things. Let me see. So the nature of this, by having the chain two, it does give you almost like a your top row, when you finish a row, really looks a lot like your side, because that chain two kind of pushes out a little bit, pushes the stitches out. So you kind of have it actually makes it kind of a pretty border along that side. So expect that as you're doing it. The pattern has you doing this for a total of, I believe, 25 rows after you've done your first row. So I just wanted to take a second. It is a completely reversible stitch. It is not critical that you mark your right side and your wrong side on this, since you're doing the same thing on every row. But I did want to just take a moment and show you how to count your rows on something like this, because I know that can be tricky on any crochet project. So let me show you how I'm going to do that on this one. I had started by making on my pattern. Let me turn that brightness down. I started by making tally marks, and then I forget at the end of the row to cross off my tally marks. So I just took the time to figure out how to count my rows. So what's nice is that chain two space, it creates a little bit of an eyelet. You can see here, these little holes. Each one of those is a row. So I can count all the way up and find out how many rows I've done. So my first one was here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So I've done a total of 18 rows. If you were to count these little bumps on the side, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which is exactly half of the 18 rows I have. The other 9 are going to be on this side. So that's a good way to check yourself. The only reason I point this out is if I'm doing a little crochet washcloth, I don't necessarily have to count the rows. When I feel like it's a good shape, I'm going to stop. But for this, these blocks all need to fit together, and it does need to be an accurate size. I've been doing these blocks to put this blanket together that we're going to put together next week. So I do need my blocks to fit together eventually. So I need to make sure that I do the correct number of rows so that they do all fit together, because the gauge for all of these blocks was already figured out. So I just wanted to show you that that's a good way to count these kinds of rows where it's not obvious where a stitch is. I hope that helps a little bit. And those were really the only tips and tricks I had for this one. Easy, fun square. I can definitely see making, this would just be a lovely little textured pattern to use in a sweater, in a cowl, for mitts. That would be really pretty as mitts too. So another way to use this stitch. So again, block 28. Crochet block of the month. I hope you guys are enjoying it, and I will see you next month for our final block and how to join your squares. So take care, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.